Let me be very clear. If you are hearing this right now, you are at the checkpoint. Life has brought you here for a reason. The question is, will you recognize the test for what it is? Or will you mistake it for failure and give up, just one day, 1 hour, 1 heartbeat away from the life you are creating? Here is the trap that almost everyone falls into. They reach this moment at the sharp edge, and instead of staying steady, they panic. They start looking for evidence. They refresh their banking app 20 times a day to see if money has suddenly appeared. They run to the mirror, desperate to check if their body looks different. They chase the person they want love from, hoping for the tiniest sign of change. But here is the truth: if you look for evidence, you kill exactly what you are trying to grow. It's like planting a seed in the ground and pulling it out every morning to see if it's sprouting. You don't accelerate it, you suffocate it. And then there is doubt. Oh, the poison of doubt. A tiny whisper of, "What if this isn't real?" spreads through the quantum field like wildfire. Your energy collapses, your vision flickers, and the universe mirrors it back. Okay, if you don't believe, then you don't receive. I have seen brilliant people with hearts bigger than mountains, lose everything at this moment. Not because they didn't deserve it, but because they handed the steering wheel back to fear. But let me tell you something shocking. Resistance does not mean it isn't working. Resistance means you are seconds from the breakthrough. Think about water at 99 degrees Celsius. It looks like nothing is happening. It's hot, sure, but still water. And then, 1 degree more, and suddenly it turns into steam. A complete state shift, irreversible, unstoppable. You are at 99 degrees. This is not the moment to stop. This is the moment to keep heating, no matter how much your mind screams otherwise. I once worked with a man who wanted to start his own business. For months he poured everything in: energy, imagination, belief. And then, almost on cue, the final checkpoint appeared. His investor backed out. His wife threatened to leave. His car broke down, all in the same week. Most would have called that a sign to quit. But he knew better. He locked himself away and went deeper than ever before. He meditated as if the business already existed. He felt gratitude as if success was already his. He cried tears of joy for a reality that wasn't yet there. And then, 48 hours later, a phone call. An investor he had never even approached wanted in. The amount? 3 times what he had lost. His wife returned with support. His friend gave him a better car. Coincidence? No. That was quantum physics in action. That was a man who passed the checkpoint. Your mind will try to convince you that you are foolish. It will scream, "Look around you. Nothing has changed." But understand this: the outer world always lags behind the inner. The seed sprouts underground long before it breaks the surface. Just because you can't see it yet does not mean it isn't working. The worst mistake you can make is to interpret silence as failure. Silence is only incubation. And then comes the most dangerous temptation of all: changing your strategy. You have been consistent for days, weeks, months. You have built momentum like a rocket about to launch. And then, at the very last moment, you decide to try something new. That is not inspiration, that is sabotage disguised as logic. Your ego whispers, "Maybe a new method will work faster." No. That is your ego trying to pull you back into control. If you are on the 31st day of a meditation practice, that is not the day to switch. That is the day to double down, to hold the line. But the cruelest mistake of all is this: falling back into old emotions. The world shows you darkness, and instead of holding gratitude, you let fear back in. You let anger tighten your chest. You let despair cloud your mind. And in that instant, you send the frequency of your old life straight back into the field. And the universe, neutral and obedient, delivers it to you. That is why so many fail. Not because they didn't do the work, but because they fell back into the very emotions they were trying to leave behind. I need you to hear me. When life looks darkest, that is the moment you must feel your light the strongest. When your bank account shows zero, you must feel wealth overflowing. When your body screams with pain, you must feel health flooding every cell. When loneliness cuts deep, you must feel love so real you can taste it. This is not illusion. This is choice. From infinite quantum possibilities, you are choosing the one that becomes real. Think of it like turbulence on an airplane. In the moment the plane shakes the hardest, people panic. They think they are about to crash. But ask any pilot, turbulence is often just the last rough stretch before you rise above the clouds into clear sky. That is where you are right now. In turbulence. And if you give in to fear, you never rise high enough to see the sunlight waiting just above. Let me give you another story. A woman I once guided had multiple sclerosis. The doctors told her she would never walk again. For a year she meditated daily, imagining herself running, dancing, feeling health as if it was already hers. And then, the final checkpoint. Her condition worsened. Suddenly she couldn't move her legs at all. Her family begged her to give up hope, to be realistic. But she refused. She rolled her wheelchair into a meditation room and sat there for 12 hours straight, pouring every fiber of her soul into the vision of walking. She wept, not from despair, but from gratitude, gratitude for the healing she already knew. On the third day, exactly 72 hours later, she felt tingling in her legs. Then warmth. Then movement. She stood up. She walked. The doctors called it a miracle. She knew better. She had passed the checkpoint. That is why the final checkpoint is not cruelty. It is initiation. It is the universe asking you to prove that you are stronger than appearances, that your faith is greater than evidence, that you choose the new reality even when the old one is screaming at you. So let me ask you, when your life shakes, when everything looks worse instead of better, will you fall back into fear, or will you hold the emotion of your vision as if it is already here? Will you let the storm drown you, or will you recognize that the storm means you are just one sunrise away from the breakthrough? The final checkpoint is not just a moment in your life. It is a crucible. A fire meant to burn away every doubt, every weakness, every trace of the old self. And like any fire, it feels unbearable when you are inside it. Your nerves shake, your heart races, your mind spins out of control. But here is what you must understand: if you endure 72 hours of this storm, you emerge reborn. Think of concrete. When it is poured, it is soft, fragile, easily destroyed. But with time, it begins to harden. If left undisturbed long enough, it becomes strong, permanent, unshakable. So it is with your brain at the final checkpoint. New neural connections are soft, still vulnerable. Disturb them, and they collapse. But if you hold steady, if you refuse to move, they crystallize into permanence. I have seen brain scans of people in this stage. Their anterior cingulate cortex, the conflict resolution center, lights up like fireworks. Their whole system is in battle mode, old reality versus new reality. And the question is simple: which one will you feed more energy to? Because whichever you feed, wins. So, how do you feed the new reality when everything in you screams to give up? You overwrite. You anchor. You flood your system again and again with the emotion of the reality you are building until your cells can no longer tell the difference between imagination and reality. A man I knew called it his quantum override. Every time doubt rose in his chest, he didn't argue with it. He didn't analyze it. He said one sentence, out loud, without hesitation: this is the test. I choose my new reality. And then immediately, not in 5 minutes, not later that night, immediately he shifted into the feeling of what he was creating. Gratitude. Love. Freedom. Abundance. Whatever it was, he drowned himself in it until doubt had no air left to breathe. He set alarms on his phone every 2 hours. When the bell rang, no matter where he was, he stopped. 3 minutes. Eyes closed. Deep breathing. He felt the reality he was building as if it was already there. Imagine that, every 2 hours sending a surge of energy into the quantum field, like hammering a nail over and over until it is driven in for good. Within 3 days, his life shifted. What looked like a breakdown became a breakthrough. He hadn't discovered magic. He had simply refused to leave the fire. But sometimes emotions alone are not enough. Sometimes the storm is too loud. That is when the anchor comes in. I have seen people program physical objects with the frequency of their vision. A stone. A ring. A simple bracelet. They held it in meditation, flooding it with gratitude, with love, with certainty. And then, when doubt attacked, they touched it. Instantly they were reminded of the frequency they had encoded. Instantly they were pulled back into the new reality. A woman I will never forget was fighting cancer. The doctors told her there was no hope. But she refused to surrender. She took her wedding ring, held it in her hands, and poured every trace of healing energy into it. For 3 days, 72 hours, every time fear rose she touched it. She reminded her body of the reality she had chosen. When her test results came back, the cancer was gone. The doctors wrote it off as a misdiagnosis. She knew better. That was her anchor. That was her conquered checkpoint. Now I want to prepare you for what these 72 hours actually feel like. Because if you know what's coming, you won't be blindsided. The first 24 hours are emotional chaos. One moment you will feel unstoppable, glowing with certainty. The next you sink into despair so heavy you can barely breathe. Do not mistake this for failure. It is recalibration. Your emotional body is stretching between two realities, and this swinging is part of the process. Ride the wave. Don't cling to the highs, don't drown in the lows. Observe, breathe, continue. The second 24 hours are mental war. Your mind will not stop. It will throw at you every reason why this cannot work. It will drag out your past failures, your scars, your mistakes. It will sound logical, even convincing. But understand, that is not logic. That is desperation. Your old self is cornered, and like any cornered animal, it fights hardest before it dies. Watch the thoughts. Let them chatter. But believe none of them. And then comes the final stage, the last 24 hours. These are the strangest. It feels like silence. Time slows. Nothing moves. It will seem like the whole world is frozen, stuck, empty. You will think, nothing is happening. I wasted my energy. But in truth, this is the calm before the birth. The moment when the caterpillar in the cocoon has dissolved into liquid. It feels like death. It looks like nothing. Yet inside, everything is transforming. Hold on, because the silence is not the end, it is the doorway. And then, when you least expect it, change happens. A phone call. A reversed diagnosis. A meeting that shifts your career. A reconciliation you thought impossible. Or maybe at first nothing external, just a peace so deep it feels like eternity. But from that moment on, your outer reality cannot help but rearrange to match the inner one you held. That is why I tell people, act as if it is already here. Don't wait for evidence. Don't wait for results. Celebrate before victory arrives. Buy the champagne and let it sit on the table. Wear the outfit for the date you haven't had yet. Set up the home office for the job that hasn't called yet. These are not gimmicks. These are signals. Every action you take as if it is already real sends a thunderous vibration into the field. I believe. I have chosen. I will not turn back. Most never understand this. They spend years circling the checkpoint, giving up a day too soon, breaking down an hour before the miracle. But not you. Not now. Because now you know. The pain, the chaos, the silence, this is not evidence you failed. It is evidence you are standing at the edge. So when the next wave of fear hits you, don't ask, why is this happening? Say, I know what this is. This is the test. This is the furnace. This is the checkpoint. And then move forward anyway. Because those who endure it, those who last 72 more hours, those are the ones who wake up in a life so different they can barely recognize themselves. Have you ever noticed that the moment when you are closest to a breakthrough is also the moment when life feels like it is falling apart? Think about it. The night is darkest just before the sun breaks through. The pressure is greatest just before a diamond is formed. And in your own life, the days when everything seems to collapse are often the days when you are just one step away from transformation. What if I told you that right now you are at the most dangerous point of your entire journey? Not dangerous because you will fail, but because you might do the very thing that destroys everything you have worked for. This is the final checkpoint. And what you do in the next 72 hours will decide everything. You have done the work, visualized, meditated, shifted your emotions, held a higher vision for your future. You have fought through doubt, through setbacks, through those nights when your old reality screamed louder than your new one. And now, whether you realize it or not, you are standing right at the edge. The quantum field has built itself around you. Like a bow drawn to its maximum tension before release, your energy has stretched, prepared, recalibrated. You are only a millimeter away from the release that changes everything. But here is the brutal truth, almost everyone gives up right here. I have seen it with my own eyes. Thousands of people, each with a vision that could transform their health, their wealth, their love, their destiny. They walk the path for weeks, sometimes months. They invest their energy, their emotions, their hope. They reach the final checkpoint. And then, they sabotage it. They let doubt in. They search for proof that it is working, only to kill the seed they planted. They change their strategy at the worst possible moment. They tell the wrong person, and that person's doubt infects them like poison. Or worse, they fall back into their old emotions. Fear. Anger. Despair. And with that single choice, the breakthrough slips away. 3 years ago, I led a group of 500 people through a 30-day transformation. By day 27, almost all of them were on fire. You could feel the energy in the room. People glowing, shifting, healing. 493 reached the final checkpoint. Do you know how many made it through? 7. Only 7. Not because the others were incapable, not because the universe was cruel, but because they made the same mistake almost everyone makes at that exact point. They mistook the test for failure instead of proof that they were close. This is the part almost no one understands. The universe does not give you a new reality without first asking you one final question: do you really mean it? Do you truly trust? Or are you just pretending? And the way it asks this question is merciless. If you are manifesting health, suddenly your symptoms flare up worse than ever. If you are attracting abundance, your bank account looks emptier than it has in years. If you are longing for love, the person you care about pulls away. It feels cruel. It feels like proof you were wrong. But it is not. It is the test. It is the final checkpoint. On a neurological level, it makes perfect sense. Before a new neural pathway becomes permanent, the old networks in your brain fight for survival. They have been wired for years, maybe decades, and they do not die quietly. They strike back. They flood you with old thoughts, old images, old emotions, begging you to return to the familiar. Your body joins the rebellion too. It creates chemical storms to pull you back into the past. It is not random, it is a war. And if you do not understand what is happening, you mistake this war for failure. You give up at 99 degrees, not realizing that 100 degrees was just around the corner. Let me tell you a story. 12 years ago, I was at my own final checkpoint. For months I had been working to heal from a chronic illness. Meditation, visualization, daily emotional discipline, I did it all. And after 6 months, it did not get better, it got worse. My doctor told me I needed immediate surgery. My family looked at me with pity. And inside my head screamed, "See? You were foolish. Give up. It doesn't work." But somewhere deeper, I remembered what I knew: the final checkpoint always feels like a breakdown. So I did not give in. I went all in. I doubled my practice. I meditated longer. I felt the emotion of healing more intensely than ever before. I ignored every piece of external evidence and chose to live in the future I was creating. Do you know what happened? 72 hours later I woke up and the pain was gone. Not reduced. Not eased. Gone. The scans showed no trace of illness. The doctors could not explain it, but I could. I had passed the checkpoint. That is the secret almost no one understands. The resistance you feel right now is not proof that you are failing. It is proof that you are close. The louder the resistance, the closer the breakthrough. That is why this moment is so dangerous, because your mind will try to convince you of the opposite. And if you listen, you throw away everything you have built.